Hello everyone, this here is our third lesson in a series that is taking a journey through the Bible. First one was our introduction. Our second and the first lesson in the book, when we actually started looking at the lesson material, was the last one. This here we will continue on, and for a review, we can see, to start with, we're going to go and take a look at why the Bible. In our introduction, we talked about what faith really was, and that no matter what you perceive to be truth, that all is involved with how you have collected facts, how you've collected evidence. When it comes to what we believe about our creation, since we cannot duplicate our creation, the fact of trying to create something from nothing, we realize that there is one that doesn't have total scientific proof. However, all the evidences that we gather are what we form and can actually determine what is truth, what is fact. And when we look at it and see the evidences that are produced in this world, we can see that when it comes on down to the Bible, there is more that proves the Bible than any other theory out there of our creation. And in our review is why the Bible? Because the Bible has withstood centuries of criticism and scrutiny. From scientists to historians to geologists to philosophers, all have had years to discredit this set of books. That by taking a thorough look at the Bible, you can draw your own conclusion based on the knowledge rather than on opinion. And that's what's so important. God has given us, and when He created us, He gave us something very special. And when we talk about creation, we can see that there is, in the scriptures, in the Bible, the very first verse has 5 very significant things that are stated there about creation, about what it takes for creation, what actually happens when something comes into existence. For there, in the best place in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning was time. God was the force. Created, that was the energy. The heavens, that was space. And the earth, that was matter. So we've had all those 5 parts that make up something that comes into existence. And we left off with going through His creation and looking at the 6 days of creation, knowing that the creation, where did life start? Almost like what evolution ended up saying. So everybody comes to the same conclusion, that life started in the sea, started in the ocean. Water in the air is first place life started. God created the water, separated the land from the seas. He also ended up, when He started creating life, life came out of the sea. Starting about fish, about birds. Then what happened? Then it went to animals, the animals on the land. Bible is in total agreement, or I should say, other scientists are in total agreement with the way the Bible talks about creation. And on that final day of creation, we saw that along with bringing forth creatures, He also created man. What did this say? It said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. It's an amazing statement that is made there at the very beginning of the Bible, because there is much that people think, well, if there's one God, how can there be, let us make man in our own image? And we can see in John, the Gospel of John, how that all ties together. that God was there, God the Father, Christ the Son, he was there, and the Holy Spirit, he was there. Just like we read in Genesis 1 about how the Spirit moved upon the water. And God was in the heavens and he spoke and created things. You see in John how that relates that with Christ, nothing was created. All things were created through him, by God the Father and him. So what happens when we got on down to the final creation? We go now into our picking up where we left off, the last part of creation. The final act of creation came when God realized that man needed company. He had all the animals that are there for companionships, and we know how we feel like when we have a dog around. Some of us, it's cat people, but our animals, our pets, those there, especially a dog, it just seems like they would be your buddy forever. But yet, even with all the animals that were around, God saw that man needed company. There in Genesis 2:18, God said, "It is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him." So he created woman. This is the world we know today. Through life, man has a need for another human in his life. To go totally on your own is not good. And God realized this. And he created woman to be our partner, to be our helper, not to be our servant, not to be our boss, but to be our helper. We and her, we and women, men and women, should all end up being a equal part of the creation. And there in Genesis 3:2 and 3, and the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die." So what is the one thing that God gave us that makes us unique? He created all the fish and the birds and the animals, and then he created man. Then he created woman to be a helper, and set us in a garden with the trees, all the things that were in the garden for us to eat of, and that except there was one tree. The tree is the fruit of the good knowledge of good and evil, and that we are told not to eat of that fruit. Well, that is the one thing God gave us that makes us totally unique to any of his other creations, that of choice. He gave us the power and the freedom to choose. If we didn't have the right of choice, he wouldn't have had to tell Eve and Adam not to eat of the fruit, for they would have acted on instinct, just like our pets, just react out of instinct most of the time, to where they know what it is that they need to do to get through life. But we have a choice. God has given us a choice, freedom of choice. And what are the responsibilities and the consequences of this unique characteristic that we have? That's it, the consequences. We make a choice and we have to live with the consequences. If we choose not to eat, we starve. If we choose to overeat, we end up with health problems. Those are consequences. If we choose not to work, where's our food going to come from? We need money to get food. And if it's not money, we need to work and till the soil to get food, because it just doesn't appear before us. We're not in Star Trek where you talk to a replicator and say, "Give me some food." All of that is something that when we make a choice, we have to end up realizing that choice will lead to consequences. So who is responsible for determining the results of the use of these unique characteristics? We are. God gave us that freedom. We have that responsibility. Along with freedom comes responsibility. If we look through our history, we know that that is definitely true. And what it is that our freedom has cost us. As Americans, we have cemeteries filled with men who fought for our right to be free. We can see throughout the world when dictators come around, people come around who want to rule and set up their own set of rules that robs people of their dignity, of their freedoms, of their right to choice. Men will fight for that. That is a freedom. That is a gift from God that is very basic to every human being. That of freedom of choice. God has given it to us. It's the greatest gift that I see that God could give us, other than that of his Son, which sets us free from consequences of when we make a bad mistake. And you can see that when Satan came to tempt Eve, he asked her, what did God say? He asked her, what is it that you can't do? And that is the one thing that comes our way in our lives, is all of a sudden we find out, what is it that we should do? And what are the choices we should make? And are we willing to make that correct choice? Well, we know that Eve and Adam and Eve made the wrong choice, because that the curse came upon man. But we also know that God, again, he cares for us. He's cared for us from the beginning, from even before the beginning, when he set this whole plan into action. He cared enough for us that he already had thought of how we can end up making up for our wrongs. The curse came because Adam and Eve failed to hold to God's order not to eat the fruit of the tree, fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. They were separated from God and the tree of life, and their physical bodies began to decay and die. That was one thing God had said. God had said, if you eat of the fruit, you will surely die. Satan changed one word in that and said, oh, you'll not die. And then to get them to decide to think that by going against God that they were actually going to be better off, he added, it'll make you as wise as God. Read the account there in Genesis 3, because you can find out, Satan first changed one word. Oh no, you will surely not die. Trying to say, God told him a lie. Satan's the father of lies. Satan was the liar. And it just so happened, Eve and Adam both ate of the fruit. And for that, God, who doesn't lie, had to hold good on what he had said, because that was the consequences. You make a mistake, you suffer the consequences. If you make the correct move, if they would have turned away, the consequences would have been, they would have still been in the garden. But as it is, they were removed from the garden. That took them away from being able to eat of the tree of life. And so their bodies began to die. And they were separated that day. That is a separation is very much like a death. And so as they began physically to die, spiritually, they were also separated from God. And what was the remedy? Satan was to bruise the heel of the seed of the woman. We will see that the seed is Christ. That seed was to bruise Satan's head. Satan's wound would be fatal. Christ would pave the way back to God. Yes, sin separates one from God. When we become separated, we need a way back. What did Christ do to deal Satan a crushing blow? Well, if we go to Hebrews chapter 9, 13 and 14. Here we can read just how it is that it says, "For if the blood of goats and bulls and the sprinkling of defiled persons with the ashes of heifer sanctify for the purification of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, purify our conscience from dead works to serve the living God." Yep. Christ dealt Satan a blow because he overcame death. He shed his blood, that through his blood we would have a clear conscience before God. As we continue, we will see what it will take on our part to get back to our Creator and the Father in heaven. So what happened after the separation? Since God had commanded them to be fruitful and multiply, Adam and Eve began a family and had many children. 2 of them were Cain and Able. Cain became a farmer, and Abel became a shepherd. Cain murdered Abel because he was jealous of Abel. Genesis 4:1-8 tells us that story. What caused this is a common problem today. That problem is that of worshiping God as God would want it, or worshiping him as we want. That was it. Cain and Abel both offered a sacrifice to God. Cain's was one of his first fruit. It is the best. Cain offered just some of his harvest. But Abel was the one who gave him God the best. So God accepted Abel's. That made Cain jealous. Well, jealousy today. Jealousy is a sin, can lead to sin. Cain decided he was just going to do what he wanted and figured God had to accept that, where Abel gave him his best. When you are told to do something and you do something else because you think it's better or easier for you, do you ever find yourself unappreciated by the one who asked you to do that something? I bring that question up because it reminds me of the time when I was a young kid. My sister and I were at my grandma's house. A tree had blown down from a storm. At least some limbs had been broken off. And we're out there in our backyard. And she'd asked us to go and help with the cleaning up after the storm. I was supposed to cut off some of the branches, some of the limbs. I had the saw, was on up there. And I got up there, and my sister started taking on some of those branches. And I said, "Those are mine." I ran on down to my grandmother, tried to tell her, but my sister was starting to take what I was supposed to do away from me. All that did was make my grandmother cry because my sister and I couldn't work together. Doesn't make too much sense when we sit there and we think that we can do something our way rather than what we was asked to without causing some problems. Sister and I, both of us, were a part of causing a problem with my grandmother. A simple task to go help with cleaning up the storm, and yet each one of us got jealous of the other. And all it did was hurt my grandmother. So we can see, when it comes on down to worshiping God, should we do it what his way? Or should we just tell him, "Lord, I'm going to do it my way and you better accept it"? It's not really a good kind of attitude. It may sound better. It may be more fun. You may think, "Oh man, to do what he wants is just so boring." But it's only for a short period of time to do something that he has asked us to do. So we know that after Cain came a period of great wickedness. And that is about where we're going to pick on up on our next time, is we're going to take a look at what happened prior to the great flood. Because all of history, all of the many of the cultures in our world today have adequate evidence that there was a great flood. So after Cain, there was that period there in Genesis 5 and 6 that the thoughts of men's hearts were only evil continually. When one tries to follow their own path and listen to their own lusts, evil works in. During this time, justice, love, and mercy became blurred to the point of not being recognizable. This grieved God to the heart that he had made man. You know, we're living in a time too right now where justice, love, and mercy become blurred, very blurred. And we need to get back with God. God is truth. God is justice. God is love. God is merciful. So how do you feel when someone you hold dear pays no attention to you? Pretty rejected. God feels that way too when you don't pay any attention to him. He loves you. He sent his son to die for you. God feels the rejection of those who won't listen to him. God does have feelings. He may be God. He may seem to be all powerful, but he does have feelings. Who runs your house and why? Your kids tell you what to do. When you go to the store, is it that you're at their mercy? Is that the way it should be? Aren't parents the ones who should run the house? Aren't they the ones who have to provide for the needs of the children? The children should be able to look up to the parents as being a provider and a protector and a leader, not the other way around. And we can see that there is just the way we are. We're children of God. We should let God be the leader, the protector, the provider. And if we do that, if we do allow him into our life to do that, he will. And we will pick up next lesson with the flood. And we'll talk about the flood, time before the flood, what happened during the flood, and hopefully from there we'll be able to understand a little bit more about God and his feelings and his word, the Bible, how true it holds. And we'll take a look at some of those evidences that prove that. I thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you next time when we talk about the flood. Thank you.